Welcome to Builder 411. I'm your host, Mike Eccles. In today's video, we're going to talk about how you wire in a complete circuit for a light switch and the light. And depending on your project, it could be you're doing a remodel, or like in this case where we're doing an addition on to the back of this house, then you're going to put in those light switches and lights, and you need to know how to wire those. So we're going to show you from start to finish how you do that. So if you're ready, I'm ready, let's do it. I'm your pro builder, Mike Eccles, and here on Builder 411, here to educate you into the processes, the materials, and the skills you need for your home improvement project. And today, we're going to be talking about lighting, how to wire in a light switch, how to wire in the light, how to do the circuit from start to finish. And before I get started, I want to put just a safety disclaimer out there. When it comes to electrical work, look at your state code. Look at your city code, because some cities won't even allow you, even though you want to do that in your project, some city codes won't allow you as a homeowner to do your own electrical work. So the first thing you need to do in the process is to make sure you understand what the city code is. Because if it doesn't allow you to do this, then you're going to have to get on the phone and call an electrician out there to come and do it. The second thing I want to talk about is this. If you don't feel 100% confident after watching this video that you can do this, then call an electrician. Because when you start talking about electrical work, whether it be receptacles or lights or any electrical work within your home, there's always a risk of property damage or death if it's not done right. The other thing I want to talk about that I'm not going to go into great detail about because I've already done the video for it, and that is how do you get the electric into that room? So in this case right here, we're doing an addition on to the back of this house. And so you have to go to your panel board, the existing panel board in the house, and you have to pull that power to this room. And in this case, we would need two power sources in this room because we have lights and we're going to have receptacles. Now, this video, we're not going to talk about the receptacles or the plug-ins, but we are going to talk about the light switches. And so you would have to go to that junction box and find a 15 amp breaker, pull that electric into this room. Now, I'm not going to cover that in this video because it's already been covered in a video. I'll put that in the link below. The first thing you have to do when you're doing any project is the layout. Lay out your project. This is an add-on to the back of this house. And so we start in from the entrance coming in and walk through each room. And we need to know where are those electric switches going to be. Now, here's why it's important to lay it out. Then in this application right here, this rear door is going to open into us. And so what we're going to put an exterior light out here, and if we put that switch over here, that doesn't make sense. Understand what I'm saying? If I'm here and I'm opening that door and the light switch is behind the door, that doesn't make sense. You want that light switch sitting on this side of the door. The way to think about this is as you're walking into the room, if the door swings to the right, you want that switch to be on the left. If the door swings to the left, you want it to be on the right. You don't want to, again, have to close the door, walk around the door to turn the light switch on as you go into that room. Make sure that you lay that room out accordingly. In this case, there's a barn door going to slide back from the hallway on this room, and so we would want that entrance switch sitting on the left side of that barn door as it rolls back. Now, in this application, we've decided we're going to move that over here on this wall, and so we laid it out that way. So once I've laid this room out, I know that I'm going to have an exterior light and light switch. I'm going to have one light switch for this main bedroom and the switch for it. There's a closet, and in the closet, we're going to put a switch in the closet and two pan lights in the closet. And then in our bathroom, we're going to have three switches in there. One switch is going to control the accent lights over the tub, another one for the main light as you walk into the bathroom, and then a light switch for the light over the vanity. So now I've laid this room out. You got to follow this process, because if you don't, you'll find yourself making mistakes and you'll have to come back and redo that. So now that we've laid this all out, now we need to go purchase the components. Okay, now I want to go into components. And before I start listing these individual components, this part of it can be almost as complicated as wiring in the switch itself. And what I mean by that is there's just a ton of options. And so I caution you as you're starting to make this build list, keep it very simple. And I'll talk about that in length as I go through this, because I think it's important that you understand that when you get in there, I may talk about a switch, you'll see that there's 30 different switches. And so what switch do you really get? And I just tell you to keep that stuff very simple, very basic, and it will work better for you. So I want to start off with Romex. Romex is just a name brand. And this is what you're going to need to wire the whole room up as far as your light switches. This is considered 14.2 with a ground. We're going to need about 150 foot of that. We bought a 250 foot roll of it. And again, don't overcomplicate it. Next thing you're going to need is these little switch boxes. And like I said, when you get into your big boxes, like a Lowe's or a Home Depot, you're going to go down there and you're going to be like 8 or 9 different one of these boxes. And again, don't overcomplicate it. These are 75 cents a piece. I'll show you why I like these and why I use these, but that's really all you need for your application too. So in our case, we need 6 of these. As I go through this, when I get done with the video, guys, I'll leave you a description and a link to each one of these components. You can just follow that link, and that link will take you right to the same item. All right, so you'll have the item number as well. But just know, in our application, we need 6 of these. You may need 1, 2, or 3. Just look at how you laid out your project, and that's what you're gonna need. The next thing, switches. Again, when you get into that, and you get in there and you start shopping for these, you'll see there's all kinds of these little switches. But this is just a regular single pole turn off and on switch. Really all you need, again, keep it very simple. A pan box. Now, this here is what you're going to be affixing your lights to in your ceiling. And I'll show you one of these once it's installed. I like to use this kind right here. I'll show you why as I do the video. You're going to need a switch cover. For every switch that you do, you're going to need a switch cover. Now, some other components that you're going to need, and that is a 3/4 inch bit. Some people do a 1/2 inch. I like to use 3/4 inch. We'll go in here and we'll drill up in our top plate so we can run our wires down through. We're going to need this to do that. So you need a good 3/4 or 1/2 inch bit in order to do that. Now you're going to need some wire nuts. And I like to get all 3 different kinds. Okay, red, yellow, and green. Now, the reason for the different colors, because it will depend how many wires that you're going to tie together, really what wire nut you're going to need. If you're just tying a couple of wires together, you'll use a yellow. But if you're going to tie like 4 wires together, you're going to need a little bigger wire nut, and that's on a red one. The other thing I like, and I'll show this more in detail when we go to laying this out, the green wire nuts, make sure they have the hole in the end. Another thing that you're going to need is staples. These here, I have found these work the best. There's 50 to a box. It costs like $4 for the box. I'll show you how these work. But just know you need a box of these, all right? Now some things, just some common tools that you're going to need as well. You're going to need a hammer to put the boxes in, a good screw gun, a good drill so you can drill that, you can put that drill bit in to drill with, and something to strip the wires by. Guys, don't overcomplicate these components, because it can be sometimes. Again, I'm going to link all those items in the description, and they'll make more sense as we get to start tying this all in. So now we want to lay this out. In other words, I want to mark where I'm going to put all of these receptacle boxes. I want to know where all these are going to be at. There is a book that lists these heights. Okay, I'm going to tell you what it is. It's no more than 48 inches. In other words, from this top of this box can be no more than 48 inches from the bottom of the floor. And the reason for that is Americans for Disabilities Act. I like to put bottom of my boxes 44 inches. So what you do is take your tape measure, measure from the bottom of the floor of the box, which is 44 inches. So in this case, I've measured from the floor. I've already put my line on there. If you notice, I got a little arrow tick there. That arrow lets you know my box is going to be on this side of that stud. Now here's a pro tip for you. One of the things that you don't want to do is come in here and put that box in here, because this exterior door has trim that goes around it. And so you don't want to lay that right in by there. And so if you get in a situation where let's say I wanted to put this box right here, all I do is add a scab on, a 2x4, to bring that out a little bit further this way. I like that height to be 44 inches for the bottom of my box. Again, it's not an option. You can't be over 48 inches to the top of your box. And this is important, because if you do have building codes that require, once you get your rough-in electrical done, that means that building inspector is going to come back out before you get to close anything up, put any sheetrock up or any finishes, and that inspector is going to look, and they literally will measure to make sure that that box is no higher to the top of that box is 48 inches, because if it is, then they're going to tell you have to redo it. These are pretty easy to install. This box has grooves on the side. That groove, these grooves, set against that 2x4. In other words, it doesn't set flush. Okay, it's not flush right now against that wall, against that 2x4. It actually is sticking out about 1/2 inch. And you want it to stick out 1/2 inch because when you put your sheetrock on there, it has to be out enough so that there's plenty of room, okay? So keep that in mind. And I'll just drive my nails in. Now you can see the box is installed. If you look at this video, you'll see that there's a junction box. Now from that junction box that I just showed you, what you're looking at is where my power feed box is. Okay, so up there was that power feed box. So I need to run a wire now from that power feed box across those roof rafters, down inside here into this box. That is going to be called my feed line. In other words, that's where I'm pulling the power from. It's going to come into this light switch, and it's going to feed this light. So I need to prep that. So the way I do that is I take my 1/2 inch bit or my 3/4 inch bit, and I've got to drill a hole up into this top plate where I'm going to run that wire down through. And what I mean by that, that wire is going to come across in the attic and come down this 2x4 here into that box. You don't want to just drop it down here because you got sheetrock and stuff going to go up there. So you have to conceal that, and the only way you do it is come right up that stud and drill you a hole about halfway in that top plate. And so that's what I'm going to do right now. So now we have that hole that we need to drop that feed wire from there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to run a wire from that box over to this feed box, from that feed box over to our switch box. Take a look at that. Okay, so you can see there's about 8 inches sticking out of that feed box. And now I've come all the way back across, and I've come down into where this box is here. All right? So now I need to cut that off. So now I'm going to cut that off, leave myself plenty of room. And I'm going to stick it through that box. And I like to pull it up. It kind of helps hold that wire that way. So now what I've done is I've pulled that lead wire, the feed wire. This is going to bring the electric to our light. I went from the feed box all the way over, down inside the wall, and into my switch. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run another wire. And I like to pull this wire out just a little bit, straighten it out before you start trying to run it up in the wall. It works very good this way. It doesn't get kinks. Okay, so now I have my second piece of Romex. This is still that 14-2. And now I have to go from here to my light switch. So I'm going to go right back into this box, this same hole that I went in a while ago. And you got to kind of work it around a little bit, but it'll go up through there. And I'm going to do the same thing just like I did before, except I'm going to pull that wire over to cross the top and put that back into my light box. Now that wire right there ultimately is the wire that's going to be responsible for providing the electricity needed to wire, to turn the light on. And so I'm going to do the same thing just like I did the other one. I'm going to bring that down here. I'm going to cut it off so it doesn't, so the wire won't pull back out. In the back of this box, there's a little blue tab. There's a tab, and you just take a screwdriver and knock that tab in a little bit. And what that does, it allows you to pull the wire through, but doesn't allow the wire to pull back through. So now that we have this wire in here, the thing that you're going to want to do is staple that right there. And so this is where that staple that I talked about in your components. This is what that staple looks like. And what we're going to do now is put that staple on these two wires about in the middle there to hold this. Don't overdrive that. You don't want that to crimp your wire and bend your wire. But you want it there where it's going to hold it. And in order for it to pass inspection, again, if you have to have that inspected, that staple has to be there. That's just a precaution so you're not pulling wires. One staple right here at the box. In other words, just like I did at this box, about 4 or 5 inches up from where it goes into the box, I put a staple. And that's just so if somebody pulls on that, they're not pulling out my box and tearing my box up. In the same way with my light box, where my light's going to go, I'll put a staple up there, about 4 or 5 inches away. In the same way with my lead box, I'll put a staple up there on the top of one of those rafters to hold that all in place. But that's really all you need to do. Now at this point, when I talk about having it roughed in, we now have that circuit roughed in. If I needed an inspection, I would do every switch this way right here. This is considered the rough end. In other words, we don't have it wired together, we have it all roughed in. They may say, once you get all your rough in electrical, you have to have it inspected. So now everything's still open, like you can see right here, it's open. That way an inspector can come in here and they can look at this to see how you got it and make sure that you follow the code. That's why you have to have a follow-up inspection. Okay, now I've moved this camera in a little bit closer to the light switch so that you can see how I wire this in, because this is really where everything happens. If you notice, there's my mark. There's where I put the box in at 44 inches. This is my feed wire that runs from up above. This is the one that's running to the light over there. This is a fancy little stripper. And they make these in a number of different types. But what that does is it allows you to take this Romex that we got right here and strip that back without damaging any of these leads. Because if you strip this with, some people use a utility knife, and if you strip this with a utility knife and you happen to cut the coating on this hot wire and it hits that ground, then it's going to short out. So these are like $5. When you go to buy your supplies, just tell them that you need a Romex stripper. There's a little blade in there, and when you slide this on, then what it does, it cuts that Romex. Once you get it on that little slide, you just run that through there on your wire, and you just run it all the way to the back of your box like I did right there. And then you pull it back off. And what that does, it takes that Romex coating, it cuts it loose the rest of the wires. It also has a little cutter on it that allows you to go in here and just cut it all loose. And so what we're trying to do is strip all this back. So we expose all those wires. So if you see here, we've got two sets. This white wire, that is your open or neutral wire. You have a ground wire. You have a black wire. That's your feed or hot wire. This is the wire that's going to your light. This is the one coming from your power feed. Now, what we need to do is we need to wire all the white wires together. So we kind of pull this around, and guys, you just have to work with this and you'll start to feel your way through this. But as you notice, I didn't cut these all the way back in that box. I left it out here where I can work on it. Now, what I like to start with is my ground wire. This is going to be the ground that grounds everything. Now, I told you that when you bought your supplies that you buy this green wire nut. And I hope that you can see this little hole that's in the end of that nut. What that does, it allows you to put a piece of copper wire through there like that. And then when you put it to these, you can wire all that together. I'm gonna cut these back just a little bit. So I've got that cut back now. It's hard when I got all these hands in here to be able to show you how this all works. I'm hoping you can see this. Is these two wires here, the grounds, and then this is my ground with the pigtail on it. And I just start turning that together, and that will all wire up a nice little connection. And I just want to twist it, because if you can look in this box, it's kind of hard to see, but it's actually twisting all those wires together. And I have my pigtail. So now I have those two grounds tied together. And so there you have it. The ground in there with the little pigtail. Now I want to wire my two neutrals together. Remember, one of those neutrals is coming from my feed wire. The other is coming from my light itself. This back just a little bit. And if you don't have these, here's another tool that you need. It's just a cutter, and it's got 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. That's what gauge wire you have, and that makes sense here in a minute. But I cut that off there, and then I put the 14, because this is 14 gauge wire, and I want to go back about 3/4 of an inch. And see how that strips that off nice and easy? And I'm stripping that off about an inch. I'm going to take one of my yellow wire nuts, and now I'm going to wire these two together. And what I try to do is put those two ends together before I put that wire nut on there. And I'm doing this backwards to the camera. It makes it a little bit challenging. And I have my two greens together with a pigtail. Here's that pigtail. Hopefully you can see this pigtail right here. Now I'm going to move to my black wires. Now that these white wires are together, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tuck those to the back of the box. I'm also done with the copper wire. I'm pushing that to the back of the box. So now everything is in this box, nice and neat. One thing I didn't cover is you don't do this until you actually got your sheetrock up. For sake of this video, I wanted to take the time to show you how to wire that switch in. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to install our switch. And so we have a couple choices here. You can take and cut this back 3/4 of an inch, take a needle nose pliers, bend it, and wrap it around the end of this screw, which I'm going to do. Or you can take and push it, cut that 3/4 inch tab, and I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little mark on here, on the back of this thing, that tells you about how much you need to strip. In other words, if I put that wire right there, I would need to strip that much, and then that goes pushed in that hole in the back. I don't like to do it that way. I like to go ahead, and then after I bend my ends, I like to go ahead, and that's what's nice about these pliers. Now some people say, well, does it matter which one goes where? No, it doesn't matter. I take my screwdriver, and I tighten that down. And I want that good and snug. If you look how that's wrapped around there, it comes more than 3/4 of the way around there and tighten down very well with this. You don't have to overdo it, but just make sure you tighten it enough. If you just take these dikes and you kind of bend this, and you'll see how I did that. I just took the dikes and I got in there and I grabbed the top and I bent it over. And I bent that together. And then I'm taking my screwdriver and I'm tightening that down. So now I have a black on the top and a black on the bottom. One of those black wires is from our feed. The other one is from our light. The last connection that we have here to finalize all this is to hook up this ground. And so I don't need all that wire. I don't need it all. So I come in here and I'm going to cut some of it off. We have the ground hooked in over here. Hopefully you can see that on the very bottom. And we have the two blacks, one on top, one on the bottom. Now that switch is wired in. All I got to do now is just kind of push that into the box. And again, you're gonna have sheetrock already on this wall, or maybe some type of laminate and some type of wood or something like that. And there you go. Now you can't see it on this switch, but on the very top, right in here, right here, it says off. On the very bottom, it says on. So when you put your switch in, make sure you don't have that upside down, because you can put that switch in upside down and the off would be down here, and it just reads funny. You'll know it as soon as you do it, because you'll look, oh, the off doesn't really spell off anymore. So the off needs to be at the top, on at the bottom. If all my sheetrock was up here, I'd go ahead and I'd screw that all the way in. I'd be done. I'd go get my cover plate. I'd take my cover plate off, and I put my cover plate on, and my switch is wired in. I'm done. Now what I want to do is move up to the light. This image right here, what I'm shooting of now is the light. And as that wire now comes across from the switch to this light, it doesn't matter which light switch what light you put up here. Whatever light fixture you decide to get now, you just hook the white wire, which is your neutral wire, to the neutral on your light, whatever light you pick out, the black or the lead hot wire to the black on your light, and your ground to your ground, screw it up in there, and then you're done. So you can pick whatever type of light that you want in this case. And I kind of want to wrap this project all up. The only thing that we didn't show you is how that lead comes in, and you feel that lead that comes down inside this wall. In other words, your hot lead, all your power has to come into that lead. Well, it goes into that junction box up there, and for each room in that, and in this addition right here, we have a lead. So we have 3 leads. Inside that box is going to have 4 leads. All we do in that situation right there, we take the red wire, and that's what we have, and we're going to hook all the blacks together, all the whites together, and all the grounds together. We close that all up, and we put a cover on it. So it doesn't matter, like if we do the outside light, it works the same way. We're going to put a box right there, a switch box. We're going to bring a lead in from our power source. Then we're going to take a wire out to where our light is going to be positioned outside. And then we'll wire that together the same identical way as we wire this switch together. All the whites go together inside there. A black on the top, a black on the bottom. Wire your ground, get those fancy little green wire nuts I showed you. And it's that easy, okay? Make sure you just follow the process that I just showed you and do each individual circuit the same way. If you plan this out, like we started from the beginning, we laid this out. And again, when you go to the components, don't let that confuse you. Keep it simple. Go get your components, lay your boxes out, start running your wire. Before you know it, you'll have the whole circuit done. I hope that you've got some value out of this video. If you did, share some love with me. Give me a big thumbs up. And if you're not part of my channel right now, give us a big subscribe. Until next time, I'll keep teaching, you keep building.